Let's ask a question that many of us have probably thought about, perhaps quietly, perhaps even a little cynically. Do psychologists have their own psychological problems? We often picture them as paragons of mental stability, calm, wise, and unflappable figures who have all the answers. They are the professional listeners, the guides who lead others out of the tangled woods of anxiety and depression. So, it feels almost contradictory to imagine them struggling with the very issues they are trained to treat. Can the person guiding you through a storm have their own ship to repair? It's a fair question, and the answer might surprise you. Not only is the answer often yes, but that yes might be one of the most important, albeit unlisted, qualifications they possess. This isn't just speculation. It's a reality backed by decades of research within the field of psychology itself. A landmark study in 1993 by psychologists Diana Elliott and James Guy set out to compare mental health professionals with professionals in other fields. The findings were striking. The group of therapists reported significantly higher rates of adversity in their childhoods. They were more likely to have come from homes fractured by divorce or the death of a parent, more likely to have experienced emotional or physical abuse, more likely to have grown up with parents who struggled with addiction or mental illness themselves. It suggests that for many, the path to becoming a psychologist wasn't a detached academic choice, but a deeply personal quest, born from a need to understand the very pain that had shaped their own early lives. So, if many therapists begin their journey from a place of personal struggle, how does this translate into their ability to help others? To understand this profound transformation, we can look to the ancient Japanese art of Kintsugi. When a precious ceramic bowl breaks, it isn't discarded. A Kintsugi master gathers the broken pieces and painstakingly glues them back together with a lacquer mixed with pure gold. The philosophy is not to hide the cracks, but to illuminate them. The finished piece is considered more beautiful and valuable, not in spite of its history of being broken, but precisely because of it. The golden seams tell a story of resilience. This is the perfect metaphor for the wounded healer. Their own healed fractures become the golden pathways of empathy, allowing them to connect with your story in a way that someone who has never been broken simply cannot. This very idea that of the wounded healer was given a name by one of the forefathers of modern psychology, Carl Jung. He wrote, "Only the wounded physician heals." Jung understood that a therapist's own journey through suffering provides them with a unique form of wisdom. It's the difference between having a map of the forest and having actually navigated its darkest paths yourself. A therapist can read every book on anxiety, but the one who has felt the chilling grip of a panic attack in their own body understands it on a cellular level. They can study theories of grief, but the one who has known the hollow ache of loss in their own heart can sit with your sorrow without needing to rush you through it. If this idea that our greatest strengths can be forged in our deepest struggles is already resonating with you, take a moment to subscribe to Mind Decode Explained. Together, we explore these complex truths, learning how the mind breaks and the magnificent ways it can learn to heal, often turning its scars into gold. This shared experience creates a powerful, unspoken bridge. When you sense that the person sitting across from you has navigated their own darkness, it fosters a profound level of trust. You don't have to over-explain your feelings. There's a quiet recognition, a felt sense that you are truly being seen, not as a collection of symptoms from a diagnostic manual, but as a whole person with a rich, complex, and sometimes painful history. As one family therapist once stated, they would always prefer to work with a therapist who has known psychological suffering firsthand. Why? Because that experience cultivates a deeper, more authentic empathy. They can hold the weight of your story without flinching because they've already learned to carry their own. This creates a sanctuary, a safe space where you can finally let down your guard and show your own broken pieces, knowing they will be held with care and understanding, not judgment. But this leads us to a crucial question, the shadow side of this archetype that must be addressed. What happens if the healer's wounds are not yet healed? What if they are still raw and bleeding? This is where the distinction between a wounded healer and a wounding healer becomes critically important. A therapist who has not done the deep, continuous work of processing their own trauma is at risk of what psychologists call projection. Imagine our Kintsugi artist trying to mend your bowl while their own hands are still shaky and covered in the wet clay of their own recently shattered pot. They might inadvertently smear their issues onto yours, seeing their own unresolved father issues in your story, or reacting to your relationship struggles with an anxiety that belongs to their own past. Instead of a clear mirror reflecting your experience, they become a distorted lens. This is precisely why the personal work of a therapist is a profound ethical obligation. It's a common misconception that therapists, once licensed, are cured. In reality, the most effective and ethical therapists are committed to a lifelong journey of self-reflection. They attend their own therapy, seek regular supervision from mentors, and constantly examine their own biases and triggers. They must become the foremost expert on their own mind, so that they can offer you a clear and uncontaminated space for your own healing. They must practice the art of Kintsugi on themselves, again and again, so their hands are steady when they help you find the gold in your own story. The work of researcher Brené Brown on vulnerability sheds a powerful light on this process. True healing isn't about achieving a state of invulnerable perfection. It's about developing the courage to be vulnerable, to sit with discomfort, to own our stories of struggle, and to build resilience through that process. A great therapist isn't someone who has no problems. They are someone who has become incredibly skilled at navigating their own vulnerability in a healthy way. They don't pretend to be a flawless guru on a mountaintop. Instead, they model the quiet strength that comes from showing up, being authentic, and doing the work. They demonstrate by their very presence that courage and healing are born not from the absence of fear or pain, but from the willingness to walk directly through them. When this journey is undertaken with integrity, something beautiful happens. Judgment falls away. As the psychoanalyst Anna Freud suggested, to be a good therapist, one must have a wide, non-prejudicial view of the world and not pass judgment on anyone's story. This compassionate, non-judgmental stance isn't something one is born with, it is earned. It is the natural fruit of having made peace with your own inner complexity. When you have faced your own shadows, your own capacity for anger, fear, or shame, you are far less likely to be shocked or judgmental of someone else's. You stop seeing people as labels and start seeing the wounded human being behind the behavior. Your own healed heart learns to see beyond the cracks, to the resilient spirit within, recognizing a fellow traveler on a difficult but sacred journey. And here is the final hopeful twist in this story. Supported by further research, while therapists may begin their lives with more adversity, studies have shown that as adults, they often exhibit higher levels of well-being and better coping mechanisms than many others. A study by Norcross, for instance, indicated this trend. How is this possible? Because their entire profession is a daily immersion in the tools of healing. They are constantly engaged in practices of self-awareness, emotional regulation, and effective communication. The very act of helping others heal becomes a reinforcing part of their own healing. By becoming masters of Kintsugi for others, they become better artisans for their own souls. The initial problem of their own psychological pain becomes the catalyst for developing an extraordinary solution. A deep well of resilience, wisdom, and emotional intelligence. So, let's return to our original question. Do all psychologists have psychological problems? The answer is more complex and far more hopeful than a simple yes or no. Many are drawn to the field because of their personal history with pain, but they don't remain stuck there. Through rigorous training, deep personal work, and the very practice of their profession, they embark on a journey of transforming that pain into profound purpose. They learn to mend their own fractures with gold, and in doing so, they learn how to guide you in finding the gold within your own. Ultimately, this story is not just about therapists. It's about all of us. Every single one of us is wounded in some way by life. We all have our own cracks, our own histories of breaking, And the great lesson of the wounded healer is that this is not a disqualification. It is our curriculum. Your struggles do not make you broken. They are the starting point of your strength. Your history is not a liability. It is the material for your own masterpiece of Kintsugi. The invitation is to look at your own fractures, not with shame, but with the gentle, reverent curiosity of a master artisan, and to ask, what gold can I find here?